Hello and welcome back to Bookish and welcome to Tag Tuesday. This week I'm doing the Canterbury Tales Tag. This tag was created by A.J. Dunn over at A.J. Dunn Reads and Writes. And they were kind enough to tag me, and I looked at the prompts and watched their video, and I thought, well, this is really an excellent tag which gives you the opportunity to talk about books, as a lot of tags do, but to maybe talk about books and to bring up books a little bit differently. So what A.J. has done is they've taken the Canterbury Tales, and they've essentially, as far as I can tell, having never read completely through the Canterbury Tales, they've taken each of the characters in the Canterbury Tales and they have created a prompt based on that character's characteristics that leads you to talk about another book. So there are 26 prompts in this tag, and AJ encouraged people to only do the prompts they wanted. And so what I've done here is I've done the first 13 prompts plus tagging people. And if I still feel like, when I look at the other prompts, I still feel like I want to do it, I'll do part 2 for next Tag Tuesday. But I've gone ahead and done 13 prompts, and I'm going to tag the people I want to tag at the end of this video, and then we'll see what happens with the rest of it. But again, thank you to AJ for tagging me. So prompt number 1. The host is the character who relates the tales to the reader. He is large and loud and merry. Recommend a Mammoth book over 800 pages for March of the Mammoths. My number 1 Mammoth book recommendation over and over again every time it comes up is Lonesome Dove. If I haven't recommended this book to you yet, I'm recommending it to you now. In my 1985, 6, whatever it was, mass market paperback, it weighs in at 945 pounds. It is 945 pounds, 945 pages. It is 945 pages of pretty much perfection with great characters, gripping story, just an amazing accomplishment and a great book, and well worth the 945 pages. Hello, Zelda. Don't bark. Okay, prompt number 2. The Knight. The Knight stands for fighting, war, and bravery. Recommend a book with a courageous main character. So I went with a book I just finished reading, and that's The Last Thing You Surrender, and the character in this book is Thelma. Thelma is a black young woman living in the 1940s during World War II who has suffered and will suffer through the course of this book several tragedies, and she comes through each one of them because of her strength of character. She comes through each one, and she manages to stay open and not to become a hate-filled person despite the terrible, awful things that happen to her. And that is, in lots of ways, I think, the definition of courage. So Thelma from The Last Thing You Surrendered by Leonard Pitts Jr. That is my character I chose for bravery and for the Knight prompt. Prompt 3, The Wife of Bath, stands for marriage, sex, and arguing. Tell us about a book with strong female character. So I'm going to go back to Lonesome Dove here and talk about really the only 2, or maybe there are 3 female characters in Lonesome Dove. The first one is Clara. Clara is one of the main characters. Gus's long lost love, his love interest, and she is an incredibly strong woman who is essentially running a horse ranch on the Great Plains outside, I believe, Ogallala, Nebraska, on her own because of something that's happened to her husband, and she's raising kids, and she is essentially the boss of a lot of ranch hands there, and she is tough, and she is smart, and she is compassionate, and she's caring, and she's full of love, and she's just an amazing character. And for a book that could easily be dude bro literature, Clara really saves it. But I also want to mention the character of Lorena from this book. Lorena in this book is a prostitute, and she's in the book from the very beginning. And she's a prostitute who wants to escape prostitution in the incredibly small town she's in, where she's the only prostitute who works in this saloon. And she is brave enough to, take a chance and to, maybe foolishly follow Jake Spoon out onto the plains in the hopes that he will take her to San Francisco, which is where she wants to go. And when he essentially abandons her, sorry for spoilers, she carries on, and she carries on following the cattle trail on her own. And that does have some tragic consequences, some terrible things happen, but she still manages to come through all of them and survive, and I think she's a brave character. I think she's an underrated character from this book. So prompt number 4, the partner is all about ambiguity. Tell us about your favorite queer character. So I'm going to go with Flocka from Canterbury by Elizabeth de Robertis, which I read I think last year or maybe the year before. It is about a group of 5 lesbians living in Uruguay in the 1970s under a brutal dictatorship, and how they make a life in a community and in a way a family for themselves, and kind of deal with personal tragedies. And Flocka is kind of the leader. She is the most out there and courageous of the women, and she is the one that I think the others all look to for strength. And I just thought she was an amazing character who remains consistent throughout the book. I thought the book was very good, not perfect, but very good, and Flocka was a great character. Prompt number 5, the Miller is bold, blasphemous, and overturns conventions. Who is your favorite naughty character? So I'm going to go with Reese from Detransition Baby. Reese is a trans woman who longs to be a mother, and she involves herself in numerous complicated relationships, and she is, a flawed character. She is imperfect. She makes all kinds of mistakes. She does things which, hurt other people, but she is incredibly interesting, incredibly strong, I think sassy, and in a lot of ways, despite some, things in her own life that she's not honest about, she is in lots of ways a truth teller, and I thought that she was the best part of Detransition Baby, a book also which I didn't think was perfect, but I thought she was a great character. Prompt number 6, the Prioress is modest, quiet, and compassionate. Recommend a book you don't hear much about on BookTube. Oh, I forgot to hold up Canterbury when I was talking about Flocka. I don't know why. I got the whole stack of books out, and then I forgot to hold up Canterbury by Carolina de Robertis, not Rebecca or whatever, Elizabeth de Robertis. Sorry, this is the book with Flocka, the great character in it. So getting back to prompt 6, the aging process, by the way, takes its toll in all kinds of ways you don't think it's going to. So this is prompt 6. I'll read it again. The Prioress is modest, quiet, and compassionate. Recommend a book you don't hear much about on BookTube. So I went with Divisadero by Michael Ondaatje. This is a book which I think this is the second novel by Ondaatje that I read, and I really liked it. I haven't heard much about it since. I remember reading a review of it before, and it basically is a story of kind of intersecting lives and timelines, separated in time historically and separated culturally, but in which, one of the things I thought was great about it is how it brings those kind of, makes those kind of connections across times and lives and things like that. One part of the story is about a poet, and the other part is about essentially a family living in California, and I really thought it was good, and I don't know that I've ever heard anybody mention it on BookTube, so I thought I would go ahead and use that for my prompt number 6. Let's see, prompt 7. The monk cares little for the rule of work and prayer. Tell us about an unconventional character. So I went with, surprise, surprise, Asla from The Other Name, part of Jon Foss's Septology, which I just love. Asla is an artist. He is a widower. He has essentially a doppelganger character in the book who's also named Asla, who is also an artist, twice divorced, estranged from his kids, an alcoholic, and really, it's almost impossible to describe the beauty of this book or why I think Asla is an offbeat or an unusual character, but he certainly is. I have the last volume of the Septology, and I'm looking forward to reading that in April to get the resolution of this story. But these books are just beautiful, and any chance I get the chance to talk about them, I'm obviously going to do exactly that. Let's see, prompt number 8. The prior is all about confession. Confess to us, have you read the Bible, Torah, Quran, or other religious texts all the way through? I have read the Bible all the way through. That was a long time ago as a child because I grew up in a fundamentalist Christian church. I read it. I don't know that I paid attention. I can't promise you I didn't skim. I'm not sure exactly how honest I was in my reading way back in the day. I probably paid a lot more attention to the New Testament than to the Old, can't promise you I read all the way through Habakkuk or anything like that, or maybe that's the shortest book. I remember making a video earlier where I talked about the shortest book in the Bible and why it was my favorite. But yeah, I have. And then another religious text I think that would qualify is I have read the Tibetan Book of the Dead. I've also read the sayings of Lao Tzu and other kind of Eastern religious texts, in part some of the Upanishads, but never all of them. And so, yes, I have read religious texts, not necessarily the ones that AJ listed here. 9. The summoner is a lecherous and a drunk who tries to sound more educated than he is. Tell us about a book that sounded better than it was. And so I chose for this, and this feels mean for me even to say it, but I chose for this a collection of short stories called How to Pronounce Knife by Suvankan Thamavangsa. There we go. And I really went into the book hoping it would just be an excellent set of short stories, and there were a few very good short stories in there, but it just was disappointing overall. And maybe that's just because it's a short story collection, and I can't think of a time I've read an entire short story collection thought all the stories were excellent. But if I'm thinking of a book that sounded better than it ended up being, that was the first one that came to mind. Again, that feels mean now that I've said it, but that's kind of my answer. Prompt number 10. The parson is poor but rich in thought and deeds. Tell us about a book that gave you more than you expected. This is a book I've been seeing people talk about again here on BookTube, and that is Minor Detail by Adania Shibley. This is a book which follows two main characters, is really kind of narrated to us by two main characters at different periods of time in the history of the Israeli and Arab conflicts. One is a psychotic Israeli army officer who does horrible things, and the other is a Palestinian woman essentially investigating kind of on her own what the psychotic army officer had done way back in the 1970s, and their stories kind of cross and interrelate, and it's really kind of brutal and but really powerful, and I just thought it was very good, and it gave me a little bit more than I thought. It was actually kind of fits this prompt perfectly, I think, in that it was it offered more than I thought it would. Prompt number 11. The Squire stands for youth and beauty and courting. What book did you fall in love with when you were a youth? Surprise, surprise, it was The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. You can tell from my 1978 copy of The Hobbit that has been much loved and much read. I think I actually wrote a review in the very back of the book somewhere. Yes, I did. I wrote way back when I was in 5th grade, this is a very good book, funny, lively, and never a dull moment. There you go. There's my official review of The Hobbit from when I think I was 12. Let's see. Prompt 12. The Clerk. The Clerk says little, but his words are wise and morally virtuous. Tell us about a short book that made you a better person. I'm not really one of those people who thinks that a book can necessarily make you a better person. I think a book can open your eyes to things that you hadn't thought of before, can make you confront things about yourself that you hadn't. I'm not sure the book itself makes you a better person. So I went with a book which really I think was kind of instrumental in altering how I thought about race relations in the United States of America, and that's an incredibly popular book which lots of people read, and that's Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi Coates. What this book really woke me up to is that the experience of growing up and being an African American man in the United States of America was far more fraught with danger and far different than I thought it was. And so, from that, you may know that I've read, and I'm trying to read all of James Baldwin's, or a lot of James Baldwin's nonfiction as part of a big group. I love James Baldwin's fiction. I think I went from Coates to Baldwin, and there is definitely a through line there, which I think has kind of changed or altered my thinking about issues related to race in the United States in a positive way. So prompt 13, this is the last prompt I'm going to do in part 1 of this version of the tag. The man of law upholds justice and knows the laws by heart. What is a book you could not imagine rereading? So that would be BookTube prize book I read last year, Red Comet, The Short Blazing Art of Sylvia Plath by Heather Clark. And this has nothing to do with the quality of the book, which I thought was really, really good. It has to do with the fact that it's, 900, 1,000 pages. Yeah, it's over 900 pages about Sylvia Plath. And, I admire some of Sylvia Plath's poetry, but I'm not, someone who was fascinated by Sylvia Plath, and I'm pretty sure I know everything that I want to know about Sylvia Plath now, and I can't imagine rereading that whole 930-page book or whatever it is. Not that it's not excellent, but I just can't imagine rereading it. So I'm going to go ahead and tag people. That's actually prompt 26, tag some people, and I'm going to tag people who I think perhaps have read the Canterbury Tales, where I know that I have not read all of it or even very much of it. So I'm going to tag my buddy Jack, the Rambling Raconteur. I'm going to tag Roz from Scaladanley with the Books, Sean from Travel Through Stories, and Margaret Pennard, all very incredibly smart people who I no doubt will come up with great answers to this if they choose to. Next week, like I said, I may do part 2 of this, depending on how I feel, if I have time, how I feel about tags. But I just thought it was a really good tag, and I want to say thank you again to AJ for tagging me. Please go check out their channel. They are great and make a lot of interesting content. Anyway, there you go. There's my version of the Canterbury Tales Tag, at least part 1 of my version of the Canterbury Tales Tag. I look forward to your comments in the comment section below, and as always, thank you for watching.